Hello and welcome to this session of ExecuNet Masterclass. I'm your host, Tony Vlahos, and my guest this hour is in fact one of the world's most in-demand executive coaches and an author, Ms. Lali Daskal. All of us, no matter where we are in our career, have to wrestle with the big questions of leadership. And we all have gaps in our leadership. If we hope to succeed, we need to understand how we lead and find our potential for being better. Well, today, Lali will offer insight and wisdom to help you understand the tendencies that stand between you and leadership greatness. Pretty important stuff, and part of our commitment here at ExecuNet to share trusted advice that can transform your career, how you work and lead, and the way you live. So let's begin at the beginning with a few housekeeping things that will make your experience today all the more enjoyable and valuable. First, very important, the slides for today's session have not been distributed. Fear not, all is not lost. If you check the handout section on the right of your screen, you'll find a PDF handout that provides the 7 leadership styles Lali will be addressing. You're free to download it and take notes. And of course, if you have any trouble, chat to us and my remarkable colleague Tom will help you out. Second, we welcome your questions today. You can chat them in and I'll relay as many as possible to Lali before the end of the session. Lastly, very important, please complete your evaluation before you go. Our session leader values your feedback and we do too. It really does help us serve you better. Well, I am honored to introduce today's guest. Lali Daskal is the founder of Lead From Within, a global leadership, executive coaching, and business consulting firm based in New York City. With more than 3 decades of experience with some of the world's largest and most experienced companies, she is one of today's most sought-after executive coaches and consultants around the world. She's written thousands of articles and columns for a variety of media, including Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, Huffington Post, Psychology Today, and the list is endless, as they say. Her new book is titled The Leadership Gap: What Gets Between You and Your Greatness, and it will be published by Penguin Portfolio the end of this month. In it, she presents a remarkably powerful system she uses to help top executives harness the virtues of their leadership style. I have read it, and I will tell you what's in it can transform you. If you like what you hear today, you'll want to go deeper and buy that book. And you can visit www.theleadershipgapbook.com to learn how to do that. That's theleadershipgapbook.com. And you can learn more about that book. With that introduction, welcome Lali to the ExecuNet stage. They are all yours.
Thank you so much, Tony. It's an honor to be here today. Today we'll be discussing the 7 leadership styles that lead to greatness. For over 3 decades, I have been an executive leadership coach and business consultant. I have worked with leaders in every sector of business at every level all around the world. After all these years, I have come to believe that true leadership is making a difference somewhere to someone in some place. And the greatest leaders accomplish this by making a difference with 7 distinct virtues. They are confident, they use their intuition, they speak with candor, they are courageous, they're brimming with integrity, they are trusted, and are loyal. What about you? When it comes to your leadership, are you making a difference? Most people, when they talk about leadership and making a difference, they want to talk about the how. They want to talk about the why. They want to talk about the where and the what of leadership. But today I want to talk to you about the who you are. What is your leadership style? Could your leadership style be improved? Could it be better? Are you making the kind of impact and difference that you want to make? If the answer is yes, congratulations. If the answer is not yet, I want to encourage you to rethink. Rethink why some people seem like they are born to lead while others struggle to gain loyalty and engagement with their people. Rethink why do some people have confidence while others suffer from self-doubt. Rethink why some leaders are successful while others can't get traction with their people no matter how hard they try. Well, for years, and actually over 3 decades, I have spent my time studying, learning, and researching these exact questions. I have worked closely with some of the best leaders in many of today's most successful companies all around the world. And today, I'm going to share with you what I've learned. I have found that most of us strive to do well, and we want to be the best at what we do. But what gets in the way is not what we know or don't know. What gets in the way of us being our best is our leadership gap. When it comes to leadership, people will forgive you for what you don't know. People will forgive you if you have things you need to learn. But people will be far less forgiving when they don't like who you are being while you are leading. I would like to share with you a story about one of my clients, and his name is Michael. Michael is a great leader. He's a great visionary. He's a true innovator and implementer, and he always gets results. On paper, Michael excels. But in life, he is the most hated leader in the company. People hate being around him or working with him or talking to him. Michael hired me as his leadership coach because he wanted to find out what was wrong with his leadership style. He was very, very passionate when he said, "I don't understand. I have all these skills. I'm really good at what I do. Everybody tells me so. So I don't understand why I don't get the respect that I deserve as a leader." What I found was that Michael was an excellent leader when it came to his skills. He was very good at solving problems and coming up with practical solutions and envisioning new creative ideas. He was the someone that people would go to if they had a problem. He was the someone that would always come up with solutions. He was that good. But the truth is, people did not like to come to him with their problems. They wanted to stay away from him. When they heard that they would be working with him or meeting with him or even presenting to him, they truly resented it. So Michael said to me, "Lolly, why don't you come and observe my work environment for 1 week?" But it just took me 1 day to figure out what was wrong. Michael's leadership style is what I call a navigator. He's really good at solving problems. In fact, he was great. But what he didn't realize, that he was being a navigator, instead of being a navigator who was trusted, he was coming across as a fixer who was arrogant. He was a fixer who was arrogant. Why? Because when people spoke to him, he hardly listened. When people asked him questions, he barked answers at them. When people needed help, instead of exploring ways to navigate through things, he told them what to do. And he didn't even ask if they understood. People truly resented his leadership style. And just between you and me, Michael had no way, he had no clue of the way he was coming across or the price he was paying for the way he was leading. I tried to tell Michael to be aware of his leadership style. And I told him that his leadership style was causing a gap. For Michael, the gap was between the navigator who was trusted and the fixer who was coming across as an arrogant person. But Michael isn't alone. In my new book, The Leadership Gap, What Gets Between You and Your Greatness, I have found in my research that within each one of us, there are two competing sides, a polarity of character, but only one leads to greatness. As a coach and business consultant, I have come across that there are greatness and gaps within us, and that we have 7 leadership styles that will lead us to greatness, but we have to be very mindful of the gaps that are created. So what are these 7 leadership styles? They spell out rethink, Rethink is an acronym for the 7 styles, leadership styles that we'll be talking about today. It is the rebel, the explorer, the truth teller, the hero, the inventor, the navigator, and the knight. Each one of these archetypes rise and is fueled by activating a distinct set of valuable virtues. But at the same time, they have within them a gap within them that causes some leaders to lead from their gaps instead of their greatness. So why don't we take a look at what are these 7 archetypes right now? The first one is the rebel. The rebel is driven by confidence, but there is a leadership gap sometimes they come across as the imposter who's plagued by self-doubt. The second archetype and the second leadership style is the explorer. The explorer is fueled by intuition, but sometimes the explorer has a leadership gap of coming across as the exploiter who's a master of manipulation. The third leadership style is the truth teller. The truth teller embraces candor, but sometimes there is this leadership gap that they come across as the deceiver who creates suspicion. And then we have the hero. The hero is someone who embraces courage, who embodies courage, but sometimes they lead from their leadership gap and they become the leader who is the bystander because they are fearful. And then we have the inventor. The inventor is all about brimming with integrity, but there is a leadership gap too. And that is sometimes the inventor can become the destroyer who's morally corrupt. And then we have the navigator. The navigator, as like Michael, who could have been someone that people trusted, but he led from his leadership gap and became the fixer who was endlessly arrogant. And the last archetype and the last leadership style is the knight. For the knight, everything is about loyalty. But sometimes the knight, that loyalty is everything, they have a leadership gap and they can come across as a mercenary who's self-serving. These are the 7 leadership styles within us. When we are stressed about our business, when we are worried about our visions, when we are pressured about our products, when we have anxiety about our jobs, when we have strain in our relationships, and when we have tension in our lives, it's not uncommon for great leaders to be pulled down by the gaps, the very traits that have made him or her successful. So how does a great leader avoid this fall? Today we'll be talking about leveraging these gaps. And the most important thing is that you need to rethink who you are and who you are not, and use this new perspective as we'll be discussing today and learn this new system so that you can evolve and become the optimal version of who you are meant to be. Today we will discover the power of who. The power of who is the difference between merely being an effective leader or being a great leader. In the leadership gap, I explore who you are. What I find that is the most important foundational element, the most important question that we should be asking. Who am I being while I am leading? Who you are being while you are leading. Because if you can understand who you are, you will surely get to stand in your greatness. So you might be asking, what is greatness? Greatness is being able to engage people with heart. Greatness is being able to communicate in ways that make sense to people. Greatness is being able to get the results that are meaningful for you and for others. But we must remember that if we are to stand in our greatness, we have to understand what is going on our inside is just as important as what is going on the outside. So, what is your leadership style? let's take a closer look at the 7 archetypes, at the 7 leadership styles, and see which one you resonate with. Let's start with the first archetype. The first archetype is the rebel. The rebel is someone who is confident. The rebel is not someone who starts revolutions. That's not what the rebel is. The rebel is the quiet warrior who embarks on a quest for a new business idea to achieve remarkable results. They want to make a difference in the world. They're very passionate about a worthy cause. The rebel is constantly asking, how can I push the envelope? The rebel is someone who has confidence, but we're not talking about arrogant confidence. No, we're talking about a confidence that comes from knowing your capabilities and knowing your competence. The rebel relies on this confidence to succeed. Confidence doesn't come from reciting affirmations, I am great, I am wonderful. I am wonderful. It comes from the skills that you have. It comes from knowing the talents that you have. The more competent you feel, the more confidence you will have. As a leader, being a rebel who is confident is very important. I always tell my clients, confidence is believing you are able, but competence is knowing you are able. When you know that you're able, that's when a leader takes action. But sometimes being a rebel who has confidence and competence can still have a leadership gap. And that gap can get in the way of the results that we want to achieve. The rebel can become the imposter who has self-doubt. What is the imposter? The imposter is the imposter syndrome, which I have found in my research that 99.1% of high achieving individuals suffer from the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome is where you feel like a fraud, where you feel you're not smart enough or you're not good enough. And very smart people find themselves in this position very often. But feeling like an imposter and having self-doubt can sabotage your leadership. And sometimes we don't even realize it. So it's very important that we learn to leverage the imposter who has self-doubt. And we can do that in 3 significant ways. Number 1, we have to stop comparing ourselves to others, because there always will be someone smarter and better and brighter than we are. And if we keep comparing ourselves to others, it's a lose-lose situation. In order to have a win-win situation in your leadership, stop comparing yourself to others and only compare yourself to yourself. Ask yourself, what can I do today that is better than it was yesterday? What could I do tomorrow that was better than today? Always constantly be measuring against yourself and stop worrying about what other people are doing, because that's a waste of time. The second thing is to remind yourself there's no such thing as perfect. Perfect is not real. It doesn't exist. And if you're striving for it, you're planning to fail. Number 3, master your skills. Work on always staying ahead of your game and become the kind of leader that is always learning, always striving, always developing, and always growing. To become a great leader, it doesn't mean that becoming a great leader doesn't mean being perfect. It means we live with our imperfections. So how do we tap into the rebel who is confident? We can do that by asking ourselves 3 daily questions. What is getting in the way of my confidence? When do I feel like an imposter? And what can I do to master my skills? It is so important to become the rebel within and to tap into our confidence and our competence. Why? Because greatness lies within you. The second archetype is the explorer. The explorer is a leader who's a pioneer, a seeker, an adventurer. A leader that uses the explorer as their leadership style is someone that looks to approach new businesses, new products in ways that haven't been done before. The explorer always asks, what can I discover? To discover new things, they use their intuition. Intuition is our sixth sense. It's our gut feeling. It's our hunches. So many times when decisions need to be made immediately, when resolutions need to be determined, the only way someone can lead is to tap in to their intuition. But many people don't trust their intuition. They get stuck in paralysis of analysis. They get stuck in thinking, and they don't get the job done. Now, don't get me wrong. We need critical and rational thinkers. But if it keeps you from getting the job done, maybe it's time to rethink how you're getting things done. So think about this. What happens when you stop using your intuition? Sometimes the explorer can have the leadership gap of the exploiter who manipulates. Now, I know what you're thinking. You might be thinking, that's very harsh. That's not me. I would never manipulate anyone. Well, you might not be doing it intentionally, but the truth is, I have seen this 1,000 times. When people get stressed, when things get overwhelming, when work gets overbearing, we tend to want to have more control. And when we want to have more control, sometimes we have the tendency to exploit people around us, and maybe even worse, we manipulate them so we can get our way. And sometimes it's the leader who sets themselves out to be the expert, and they do things that say, you know what, I know what needs to be done and you don't know. Sometimes we can come across an exploiter or a manipulator when, as a leader, we withhold information and we make people around us feel insecure or less competent. And maybe even worse, sometimes we can become the leader who makes threats. And maybe you might sound like this: I will do this, or I won't let you do this until you do. And you know how that sounds. You can fill in those blanks. This might sound harsh, but when things get stressful, our gaps are very, very visible, even if we don't want them to be. So in order to avoid the gap and the exploiter who manipulates, we must learn to leverage the exploiter by doing these three compelling things. Number one is to have a clear, compelling vision. You have to have a defined vision in order to lead people to where they need to go, in order for people to know the roles they need to play in the vision that you have imparted on them. Number two, create a strategic plan. The very best leaders have truly defined, detailed plans, and they allow for their intuition to take over when things are not moving forward. Number three is leave your rational mind behind. The smartest among us pride ourselves on our critical thinking. Critical thinking is extremely important, but when it gets in the way of doing your job and it doesn't serve you, maybe it's time to leave your rational mind behind. We have to understand there is time for critical thinking, there's time for rational thinking, but the best explorers, the best leaders know when it's time to let go of what they know in order to let something new come in. Einstein said, the intuitive mind is the sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. A very smart man, and this is something that we should take to heart. So in order to remain the explorer and not become the exploiter, ask yourself these three daily questions. Am I too controlling? Do I get stuck in paralysis of analysis? And how can I learn to trust my intuition more? Learn to become the explorer who has intuition within. Stay far clear of becoming the exploiter who manipulates. Why? Because greatness lies within you. The third archetype and the third leadership style is the truth teller. The truth teller feels very, very strongly and very passionately about speaking the truth. They take truth telling as almost it's their duty. I need to tell you the truth. I know that if you're surrounded by a truth teller, you know their leadership style well. The truth teller always asks themselves, where shall I speak up? In an ongoing survey at Harvard Business Review, They asked tens and thousands of people around the world, what attributes are you looking for and admire most in a leader? Guess what the number one answer was? It was candor. It was honesty. It was the number one ranking answer of attributes. And they even said they admire that in their colleagues. So honesty is important. But being a truth teller, I have to tell you, is hard. I know this because there's a study that came out that said that when people speak, every third sentence is a lie. Can you imagine that? If every third sentence is a lie, then lying is so pervasive. It's very hard to tell the truth. Most of us have a hard time making our leadership style the truth teller. But if we don't have leaders who tell us the truth, it can cost us in our business, and it can cost us in our productivity and in our effectiveness. And basically, it can cost us in our bottom line. Why? Because the gap that stands in the way of being a truth teller is the deceiver who creates suspicion. Being a deceiver is someone who withholds information. When you withhold information and you don't tell the whole truth, people start to become paranoid. People start to make up stories for themselves. And their stories are usually 10 times worse than the reality. And when they become paranoid, and when they become, they say, wow, what is really happening here? What is the real reality? They become suspicious. And it creates a culture of suspicion. So if you're serious about being a leader, I know you can be, the great leader I know you can be, you must become the truth teller who speaks with candor. And you must do it by leveraging the deceiver within. How do you do that? You do that by communicating everything. Don't hold back. Leaders are sometimes very fearful about communicating bad things to their employees, bad things to the company. But I really believe that you must communicate, communicate, communicate. Tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. The second thing is to create a culture of candor. People should always feel free to make mistakes. Make people think that making a mistake is part of this culture. Make people think that if you make a mistake and you speak up with it and you tell us the truth, it is okay. Number 3, eliminate barricades of insufficiencies. Get rid of the roadblocks and any process that keeps people from performing well and creates liars. Sometimes when things are difficult, people tend to lie because they don't want to be called out. So we have to be very careful to eliminate those barricades. Candor is a compliment. What it does, it implies equality, and it means we are in this together. So if you want to tap into the heart of the truth teller, you should ask yourself these 3 daily questions. How can I make candor a daily practice? How can I encourage others to speak up honestly? And what would it take for me to realize that speaking the truth serves others? It's so important to become the truth teller who speaks with candor. It's so important to tell the truth. Now, I know telling the truth can sometimes be hard, but it's the best way to lead. And frankly, it's the only way to lead. Why? Because I know greatness lies within you. So what is the 4th leadership style, the 4th archetype? It is the hero who is courageous. The hero is someone who acts when someone else has lesser courage. It's the leader who is fearless. It's the leader who is brave. Now, when I talk about heroes, heroes act in spite of their fear, in spite of overwhelming opposition. And for most of us, if you think about it, we're not really afraid of being brave. We're afraid of what it takes to be brave. Now, the hero, what do they constantly ask themselves? They always ask themselves, where is courage needed? But just because we know we can be courageous and we can be the hero, we have within us a leadership gap. And that gap is of the bystander who is fearful. The bystander, they see something and they do nothing. They hear something and they say nothing. The bystander who acts out of fear, a leader who doesn't do what they need to do because they are fearful, will end up costing the business, the team, the company in so many ways. It could be devastating. So how does one leverage the gap of the bystander who is fearful? You can do it by 3 very important ways. Number 1 is when you see something, make sure you do something about it. As a leader, you have to take action. When you hear something, make sure to say something. You must speak up. As a leader, people are looking up to you for direction. If you don't do something and you don't say something, they won't either. The third thing is, even if you feel fearful, do it anyway. Just do it. The moment you choose not to be the bystander is the moment you uncover the hero within. Hard times don't create heroes. It is during the hard times when the hero within us is revealed. And in order to do that, in order to find the hero within, we must ask ourselves these 3 daily questions. What kind of things do I avoid because I am fearful? What does it mean to be brave in the face of fear? And what would I do if fear was not an option? If you truly want to lead with being the courageous hero, you need to find the courage within. Why? Because I believe greatness lies within you. The 5th archetype, the 5th leadership style is the inventor. I really like the inventor because the inventor is a leader who does everything with integrity. The leader who leads with integrity is constantly looking for the best ways to improve processes, products, and they're always looking to perfect their craft. And they're constantly asking themselves, how can I make things better? The inventor, in order to make things better, they utilize their integrity. Their integrity means they do what is right, not because they have to, but because they know how important it is. Knowing what's right isn't as important as doing what is right. And as a leader, you need to know what is right and do what is right. But there is a gap. The inventor who leads with integrity can sometimes come across as a destroyer who is corrupt. And again, you might be saying to yourself, that is extremely harsh. But let me explain what that means exactly. It means the leader that says sometimes, let's cut corners. Let's get this done now, and I don't care of the quality of what it is. It's the leader that says faster, cheaper, sooner. And what does it do? It ends up costing you in your business and in your leadership. It ends up costing you in trust of your people, the respect of your clients, and you might just end up costing you in your leadership. In order not to be the destroyer who comes across as corrupt, we need to be able to leverage the destroyer within. So how do we do this? We do this in 3 powerful ways. Number 1, you need to deliver on your promises. And inventors, it's essential to stay credible. And because your stakeholders trust your opinion, right? It's very important that people trust you. So how do you do this? I always tell my leaders, under promise and over deliver, so that people say, wow, he, she really delivered on what they said they would do. Number 2 is honor your commitments. Be accountable, be responsible for what you say and what you do. People are always watching you, what you say and what you do. So be the kind of leader who leads with integrity. Number 3 is have a consistent moral code. And guess what? Follow it. It's not only important to have one, but it's very important to follow it. Doing what is right is not always easy. As you know, sometimes it's easier to say, let's just get this done already. But it's very important to remain the leader who embraces their integrity, who does everything that you do with excellence. So what does this mean? How does this pertain to you? It starts with you. Integrity starts with you. Everything that you do truly matters. So in order to remain the inventor who has integrity, you can ask yourself these 3 daily questions. Do I honor my commitments? Do I have an inner moral code? And do I follow it? And do I deliver on my promises? To become the inventor who leads with integrity instead of the destroyer who is corrupt. Tap into what is right and not only what is easy. Why? Because I believe greatness lies within you. The 6th archetype, the 6th leadership style is the navigator. As we learned, the navigator is like the Michael, right? Michael was someone who was very good at taking complicated subjects and complicated situations and making them simple. They're very good at steering people and giving them the right direction and having great outcomes. The true navigator always asks themselves, how can we go where we need to go? But the navigator, it's very important that people trust them. Because when it comes to being a navigator, if you're going to solve complex problems, if you're going to solve complicated circumstances, people need to be able to trust you. When it comes to trusting you, people will listen to you. And it's very important that as a leader, people trust you. But as we know, there is for every style, every leadership style, there is a gap. And the navigator, who's very good at solving problems, who's very good at coming up with practical solutions, can have the leadership gap of being the fixer who is arrogant. The fixer is someone who's constantly telling other people what to do and how to do it. They are the micromanagers, and they're very bad at saying to others, what do you think, right? They're always micromanaging everything and everyone. The fixer is constantly crossing boundaries all the time. And because that is true, people view them as being arrogant. So what I would like to do now is I would like to give you some examples of what it sounds like to be a fixer. And maybe you don't realize it, that if you're leading in this way, you're coming across as a fixer and you didn't even realize it. So here are a couple examples of what a fixer leader sounds like. Do you insist on helping others in the way you believe they need helping instead of how they believe they need helping? Do you hope your rescuing actions will get others to admire you? Do you struggle to focus on or complete your own work because you're too drained from running errands for others? And do you feel totally powerless and worthless when you cannot help someone? Or do you help others primarily because it feels like the best way for you to gain positive attention? If any of this is true for you, you are leading from your gaps and not from your greatness. So how do we leverage the fixer within? We have to trust people to fend for themselves. We have hired very smart and capable people. Let's learn to trust them to fend for themselves. Let's learn to allow them to do their jobs. Number 2 is to be mindful of your boundaries. Stop crossing over the boundaries of becoming someone who's telling people what to do instead of becoming the leader who shows people how to do it. And number 3 is fix the fixer. The reason why we become fixers is because we want to be validated and we want to be acknowledged and we want to be recognized. But that's not the reason that we should be leading people. People know we are smart. People know we are capable. And we disempower them if we're arrogant and a fixer. So it's very important to become the navigator and empower our people. Great leaders knows the way, but doesn't always tell the way. They empower you in order for you to find it yourself. So how do we make sure that we're the navigator that's not fixing? We can ask ourselves these 3 daily questions. Am I a micromanager? Do I cross boundaries? Am I a fixer? It's so important to become the leader who's more of a navigator than a fixer who is arrogant. Why? Because I believe greatness lies within you. The last leadership style, the last archetype that we want to talk about today is not about gender. It's about character, and that is the knight. The Knight is all about loyalty. The Knight is devoted to serving others. The Knight knows that to have loyalty means to be reliable, means to be dependable. It means that you are dedicated to your people. Knights will stand by you and serve you even before they serve themselves. As a Knight, they're always asking themselves, how can I serve you? While others are thinking, how can I serve myself? A Knight serves their people and their clients and their customers and their vendors. For the Knight, loyalty is their inner driver. But as we know by now, like with every other leadership style, there is a gap. And the Knight's gap, who's all about serving others, comes across as the mercenary who's self-serving. A mercenary who's self-serving sounds a lot like this. Why aren't you doing that for me? How will you serve me? What have you done for me? Everything that they do revolves around me, 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 me. You might not think this applies to you, but in times of stress, we sometimes use language and we sometimes have actions that come across as extremely self-serving and not serving others. This is a true way of alienating people. But if you want to be close to your people and dedicated to your people, you have to leverage the mercenary within. And you can do this by doing three powerful things. Number one is utilize the strengths of your team. It's about the team. It's never about me. It is about us. It's very important that a leader realize that it takes a group of people and a group of people with their strengths and their gifts to make things happen. So utilize the strengths of your team. Number two is establish a solid foundation. Know your team, know what drives them, know what motivates them, know what inspires them, and let them be who they are so they can excel. Number three is learn more about your people. How much time do you get to spend with the people that you are leading? Do you know them? Do they know that you care about them? As a leader, your most important aspect of your leadership is your people. So when we think about a Knight has strong opinions and even a stronger mind. Yet a Knight, they lead with a tender heart. So in order to become the Knight who leads with a tender heart and a strong mind, you have to be able to leverage that in the mercenary, and you do that by asking yourself these three daily questions. Do I lead to serve, or do I serve to lead? Do I protect those around me, or do I show the people around me loyalty? It's so important to become the Knight who is all about loyalty. Why? Because I believe greatness lies within you. These are the 7 leadership styles. You are not one and you're not another. You are the sum of all of these archetypes. In every circumstance, in every opportunity, in every project, in every form of your leadership style will be presented. But it's very important that we rethink who we are, which archetype that we are. Are we the rebel, the explorer, the truth teller, the hero, the inventor, the navigator, or the Knight? Which archetype are you? Because if we don't leverage the gaps that are within us, they will compromise your leadership. Rethink who you are and what you know and what you do and how you do it. Because great leaders change the world around them, but they start by changing within. In my new book, The Leadership Gap, I talk about how you can become the best leader that you want to be and how to unleash your greatness and leverage your gaps. If you're interested in finding out more about the leadership gap, what gets between you and your greatness, order the book today at theleadershipgapbook.com. And if you're interested in finding out more about my coaching and how I work with leaders, you can find me at lollydaskal.com. And for all of you listening today, I believe that greatness lies within all of you. Thank you.
Lolly, thank you. We've got some terrific questions from the class, and we'll turn to those right now. And I'm going to paraphrase the first one so I can make the point. So if my CEO, Lolly, said to me, hey, Tony, stop being such a rebel. This is a true story, by the way. Be more of a navigator. Could I change? Is that something that I can do? And is it important that I do what my CEO wants me to do, which is be someone else or embody a different archetype?
And that is a great question. The answer to that is, think about the archetypes more about the virtues of the archetype. So the rebel is confident. So please don't get rid of being a confident person. And the navigator is about trust. And you need trust. As I said in one of the slides, we are the sum of all of these parts. You need to be confident and you need to be trusted. So don't change for anything, but learn to leverage the parts you don't have.
Got it. Okay. Let's go on to a related question, Lolly. Of course, we're blindsided by things we can't see. So when it comes to our gaps, who can leaders trust or count on to show them these gaps? How do the gaps manifest themselves in a way outside of ourselves that allows us to see who we are so we can fix?
Absolutely. So we can leverage the gaps, right? So one of the most important things that I have found is even if people give feedback, most leaders don't listen. Most people say, oh, that's not me. So what has to happen is there has to be first a breakdown within the leader. They don't get the results they want. People are leaving their companies. The teams are falling apart. Something has to go wrong in order for them to say, I'm doing everything I think I know what to do, but it's not working. The minute it stops working is the moment they can look inside themselves and say, am I leading from my greatness or am I leading from my gaps? Because to call somebody out, sometimes I have found people say, oh, that's not me. I'm not doing that. The only time people really say it's them, it's when the imposter shows up and when the fixer shows up. Nobody calls themselves a deceiver and nobody calls themselves the mercenary. It's only when things really break down, that's when teams and leaders say, now we really have to look at what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. I love this question someone just chatted. It seems that the gaps usually show up under stress. So what are some options for dealing with the stress so that the greatness can resurface?
What a great question. I love that question. The thing about the rethink system is that at any given moment, we can take a deep breath and ask ourselves, in this situation, if I want to lead from my greatness, who do I need to be? And if I don't become that archetype, that leadership style, I most likely will be leading from my gaps. So take a deep breath. And I always ask my clients, ask yourself this question. If I want to lead with greatness, who do I need to be? If not, most likely in the stressful situation, the gap will show up.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a couple of questions related to leaders and the organizations they lead. First question, Lolly. How do leaders who embody different archetypes put together the right team? I love that question because I think it goes to understanding personality makeup so that you can have something greater in the whole than the individual parts. But help us understand how leaders who are one or the other or seem to kind of gravitate to a certain type of archetype put together teams. Do they do it differently or do the different considerations in each case?
So I think that's a brilliant question. And I'm asked this question a lot. And I find this in workshops that I work with teams and with boards. They always say, so what leadership, what archetype do we need to have in this meeting? And I always say to them this, you have these 7 virtues within all of you. But sometimes people act like the bystanders, right? Or they act self-serving. And so if they know this system and they know how it works, because now you've gotten a very high level of how it works, in a meeting, you can say, who here is going to be the hero? Who here is going to help us navigate? You can call people out and ask for assistance in the kind of leadership style that you need. Knowing this proven system gives you a shortcut for greatness within your teams.
Mm-hmm. Here's the second question related to organizations, and it's In fact, a question potentially about you. So here it is. As a consultant or as a coach to corporations, how does one integrate the message, meaning understanding the archetypes we are so we can fix the gaps? How do you integrate that into the complex dynamics of a living, breathing, existing company?
So I've been doing this for 3 decades, and it's very important to make this part of your system, to make this part of your teams and organization and company's language. If everybody's speaking the same language, if everybody knows the 7 virtues of which we need to be confident, or we need to use our intuition, or we need to be truth tellers, we need to speak with candor, then what happens is, as a leader, you can call out and say, we need more of this, we need more of that. And I have seen this over and over again. It's almost like a shortcut to greatness. I've seen it in large corporations, which I have coached the leaders, I've coached the boards, I have coached leadership teams, and I'll be standing in front facilitating a workshop, and I say, we are missing all the knights. Everybody seems to be serving only themselves. Where are the knights? And then all of a sudden, people start to think differently. So I believe the reason why I wrote this book is because I've been teaching the system for so long, and I wanted this to become available so people can use them in their organizations.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is more of an observation than a question, Lolly, but in response to the question I raised earlier regarding who can help you see your gaps, of course, someone very wisely chatted in, well, look to other great leaders at times, or look to great leaders who've fallen from great heights, was the other chat. And, you know, it reminds me that as I was reading your book, and you, in fact, in the book, list heroes that we should look to or explorers, and I noticed that at times they're not traditional corporate leaders. For example, I recall seeing J.K. Rowling's name in the section on courageous leaders. And I remember seeing, is it Neil deGrasse Tyson? Did I get that right? Or Tyson
Absolutely.
deGrasse? Yep. Who is not what you'd think of, certainly a CEO, but is an explorer, a leading explorer in some very fundamental ways. So can you riff on this idea a bit? I mean, in your research, did you find that often we in corporate life do not look too far beyond corporate life for inspiration and guidance and even mentorship? Is that something that you came across as you were researching your book?
So a long time ago, someone once asked me, what is leadership? And this was in the early 80s when they asked me this question. And that's where I came up with the definition, what I talked about earlier in the presentation. A leadership is about making a difference somewhere to someone in some place. And they looked at me with cross-eyed. They were like, Lolly, no, it's about title. It's about position. And the reason I put individuals that were interesting in my book, because most of the time we take it for granted who true leaders are. My company's called Lead From Within for a reason. I believe that every individual that's making an impact, that's making a significant, that's contributing is a leader. And I put interesting leaders in the book for that reason, to make us rethink who we think leaders are. It's not about title. It's not about position. It's the person sitting next to you. It's the person you're having a conversation with. It's the person that is impacting your life. That is the leader. And you yourself show up as a leader all the time, but you might not be taking ownership or responsibility for it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Great question coming up. When we think about how disengaged our employees, our workers are from the brand, from the day-to-day operation of the business, and there are, of course, countless studies that report as high as 70% at times are disengaged. And when we think about the different archetypes you've drawn our attention to today, who fosters a sense of connection and belonging among employees better than others? And what can we learn from that archetype so that our organizations can, and our workers can, be far more engaged than they are today?
And that's such a great question. I see this with organizations all the time. And especially now, leaders and CEOs that I work with are always saying, you know, I can't keep my millennials. They're always leaving. And this is what I have found to be true. People need to know that they are valued. People need to know that they matter. And people need to know that as a leader, you are there to serve them. You are invested in their development. You're invested in their success. And when we've created cultures of leaders, where people are invested in each other, the retention and the engagement goes up. I'll never forget, I worked in an organization. I came in, they said, we need a miracle. Within 18 months, everybody that thought that the people that thought they were leaving and wanting to get better jobs were there, and they were recommitted and taking responsibility for their jobs like they never had before, because we validated them, we let them know they mattered, and we recognized them.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting some great chats from the class. Again, these are observations, Lala, but I think it's important for all of us to hear these around additional leadership archetypes. And of course, some might be enveloped in the archetypes you've drawn our attention to, but I think they're worth sharing, at least a few of them. I'm getting, well, there's also a great need for leaders who are great coaches as a form of people development. And of course, builders, leaders who've got entrepreneurial sort of spirit and implementation skills, and leaders that can be change catalysts. These are all wonderful archetypes as well, are they not? Are they wrapped up in the 7 that you've talked to us about, or are these somewhat distinct from those?
They're in the book, and there wasn't enough time. If you think about it this way, even though it's called master class, we only had an hour. This is 30, right? This is 30 years of research. The changer, the builder, the implementer, they're all in the book. Well, you talk about that explicitly, what it means within those archetypes. I tried to give you as much as I could, but I only had a certain amount of time. You will find those leadership styles in the book under one of these archetypes.
Mm-hmm. Another question around organizational makeup. I really love this one. So based on everything we've been talking about around the need for us to be pretty much all these things, because they're within us, as you've said. Do you recommend that, say, I as a CEO who's forming an executive team, consciously balance the team with the different types, or is it better to get generalists, say, on the management team who take on different leadership roles as needed? So we're kind of shifting, and depending on the situation, reacting as a different archetype. Is there any right or wrong in that scenario?
It's such a brilliant question, because I think it's on other people's minds. So I'm so happy you asked that question. So I think this is very important to distinguish this. We have within us all these leadership styles. But sometimes as a leader, if you're in a meeting, it's very important to look around the room and call upon someone and say, can you be the hero now? That means, can you be courageous? Can you be the truth teller? We need to allow people to know that these virtues, these 7 virtues, are within us. We're the sum of all these parts. But yet at different times, we need to bring that virtue forward. We need to bring that archetype forward. But different people are better at being better truth tellers than they are at being courageous, than they are at fixing problems or guiding problems. So as a leader, it's great to call upon someone in your team, say, can you be the navigator now? Can you be the hero now? But we have to teach our team, we have to know within our own leadership, we have to have all these virtues ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I want to take one more, and I know you touched on this word, this idea earlier, and I love that someone rechatted the concept, and it has to do with intuition. And it seems to this person, I think to many of us, that it's a vastly overlooked aspect of who we are as humans. We tend to go for data, we tend to go for analysis, and those are all cool and righteous things. But talk to us about intuition. Do all good leaders develop and practice it? And is it something that we would be better doing more of, relying on our intuition?
Whoever asked that question, I want to say thank you. Because I didn't say it in this master class, but it's in the book. And I want to talk about intuition in a very unique way. When I researched what intuition is, it's more than your sixth sense. It's more than your gut feeling. And I talk about this at length in the book. It really deep dives, but I want to just say something about intuition. Think about intuition this way. When you have an experience, that experience becomes like a chip in your brain. When you have a conversation with someone, it becomes a chip in your brain. When you read something, it becomes a chip in your brain. When you have all these experiences and conversations and relationships, right? You have all these chips in your brain, they're all in there. And when you need to decide something, and you have to be decisive about something, and you ask an open-ended question, what should I do in this situation? Your brain, science shows that your brain has this kind of tally that it does, and it taps into all your experiences and all your books that you've read and all the people that you've met, and it comes up with an answer, and it sounds like, do it. This is it. And if it's less than 4 words, it's intuition. And the moment you add because, you've become an analytical thinker. And I teach the intuitive leader to many leaders. I teach it as a workshop. So we need to understand intuition isn't just like a touchy-feely kind of subject. This is science. Think of all the chips in your brain adding up to give you the exact answer that you need in that moment. That's what intuition is.
Well, on that beautiful point, we're going to wrap up today's masterclass session. I'm getting lots of chats from people wondering, will we see the slides? And the answer is, if you've registered and you're here today, which you are, you're going to get the recording of today's session, so you'll be able to replay and watch what Lali was talking about in the form of her slides. So the answer is yes. So Lali, thank you so much for sharing your time and your insight with us today. Thank you all for your marvelous questions. As always, you guys rock. I learned a lot just getting to ask your questions. And I hope you leaned in and picked up something today that will help you and transform you. And please check out the book. I think it's worth your while. With that, Lali, any final thoughts before we officially wrap up today's masterclass session?
You know, I put into this slide something very intentional. I put in the slide that greatness lies within you. I think most leaders are so overworked and they have so much on their plate that they sometimes forget that they have greatness within them, that they're impacting and influencing people on a daily basis. And it was my way of recognizing them and validating for all the work that they do. And I would just like to say thank you, because greatness does lie within you.
Very awesome. Well, thank you again, Lali. Thank you all. And I look forward to seeing you at the next masterclass. Bye for now.